Today is my 70th birthday. The dining room is dressed in soft golden light, the table crowded with food I once thought would bring joy. But my eyes keep returning to a single ordinary envelope placed right on my plate. It looks so plain, so fragile, yet the moment I see the handwriting, my chest tightens. I would recognize those strokes anywhere, the slanted, careful curves of my late wife. She has been gone for 5 years, yet here is her trace staring back at me as if she had never left. Around me, laughter fills the air, but it is hollow, distant. My son does not sit beside me. He chose the chair farthest away, leaving an empty space at my right, as if to mark the distance between us. 3 years of silence stretch between father and son, heavier than the air in this room. Guests raise glasses, chatter about business, clink forks against plates, but my heart beats only against that envelope. I remember when birthdays were filled with warmth, the smell of fresh bread she baked, my children running barefoot through the house. My son once small enough to climb into my lap. Now he avoids my gaze, turning to his friends instead. That gap between us has become a canyon. The envelope rests quietly, but it holds power. My fingers brush against it, trembling. The paper is thin, the ink faint, but the weight is unbearable. Why today? Why now? What truth could possibly be sealed within? And then the first cut comes. My son rises, glass in hand. His voice carries sharp and cold. To my father, 70 years and still clinging to scraps. Let's drink to the past, because the future is mine. Laughter erupts from a few at the table, but it is not warm. It is cruel. My cheeks burn, yet I stay silent. My eyes return to the envelope, searching for strength in the memory of the woman who once bound this family together. The stakes are already clear. Betrayal is in the air, danger hides behind smiles, and I feel the shadow of death in every beat of my heart. That envelope, that handwriting is not only memory, it is warning, perhaps even salvation. I close my fist around the edge of the letter. I know this is only the beginning of something none of us are ready to face. And that was only the beginning. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The empty chair at my right is louder than any voice in the room. It is the seat my son once fought over as a boy, always wanting to be closest to me, always tugging at my sleeve to get my attention. Now, at 70, that same chair is a symbol of the void between us, a deliberate insult left for everyone to see. Guests notice, even if they pretend not to. Their eyes flick toward the gap, then away, unwilling to touch the tension. I chew slowly, though the food tastes like sand. The roast duck, once his favorite dish, lies untouched at the far end of the table. Instead, he laughs with his colleagues, men who glance at me with a mixture of pity and amusement. He clinks glasses with them, ignoring me entirely, as if I am just a shadow at my own celebration. Silence has its own way of speaking. Every time I glance at that chair, I hear his rejection. It is not about the seat itself, it is about what it represents. Years of distance, unspoken accusations, and the inheritance everyone whispers about, but no one dares to discuss aloud. I let my fingers trail along the rim of my glass. The wine is deep red, reminding me of the soil from our old countryside home. My father used to tell me, a family without respect is like wine left open. It sours quickly. His words linger in my ears tonight. Just then, my granddaughter leans close from the left side. Her hair brushes my sleeve as she whispers, almost trembling, "Grandpa, don't open it here, please." Her eyes dart toward the envelope on my plate. Her warning is soft, but it strikes like thunder. Why would she say that? What does she know? I glance back at the empty chair, its silence heavier now. Something is brewing, and she senses it. For a moment, I want to reach for her hand, but she pulls back quickly, afraid of being noticed. The night feels colder. I know the storm has only begun. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. The envelope waits for me untouched, its pale surface glowing faintly under the chandelier. My eyes keep drifting back to it even as forks scrape plates and wine pours freely around me. The handwriting across the front is unmistakable, my late wife's. She always wrote with a slight tilt to the right, each letter carrying a softness that reminded me of the way she touched my arm when she wanted me to stop worrying. To see her hand again now, after 5 years in the ground, makes my chest tighten as though I cannot breathe. I run my thumb across the curve of the M. It is real. This is no imitation. I know because I once teased her for always curling her M's like waves. No one else knew that detail. No one else could have written this. A personal trace from beyond the grave or from someone who held her secrets. I hesitate. The ordinary paper feels unusual in this moment, heavier than stone. My hands tremble slightly and I let them rest on my lap, hoping no one notices. But when I glance up, I catch my son's wife watching me. Her eyes are sharp, assessing. She quickly looks away, whispering something into my son's ear. His lips curl into a faint smirk. It is not only betrayal that hangs in this room, it is conspiracy. I know the lawyer is not here yet, but their behavior tells me something legal is already in play. My wife's letter could be the last thread holding me upright. I recall an old folk tale my father used to tell a fisherman who found a message sealed in a bottle from his dead wife, guiding him to treasure beneath the waves. At the time I dismissed it as superstition. Tonight it feels like prophecy. I press the envelope to the table, but I do not open it. Instead, I close my eyes briefly, listening to the laughter that does not include me. The scent of roasted garlic, once comforting, now turns my stomach. My wife's perfume used to linger in this house. Now all I smell is distance. Across the table, my son raises his glass again. His voice cuts through the noise. "Father, you should enjoy this while it lasts." The guests chuckle uneasily. Some lower their eyes, embarrassed for me. I stare at the envelope. My heart pounds harder. This letter has become a weapon, and I'm not sure whether it is meant to protect me or to expose me. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The clinking of glasses rises again, and this time my son stands tall at the head of the table. His eyes sweep across the guests, then settle briefly on me with a look that feels more like a challenge than affection. He clears his throat, and silence descends. Even the laughter of his colleagues fades, as if everyone is waiting for a performance they know will sting. To my father, he begins, his voice smooth but sharp as broken glass. 70 years, and still somehow sitting here with us. Let's toast to his long life, though it hasn't exactly been a prosperous one. A ripple of uncomfortable chuckles moves around the table. Some laugh because they think they must. Others look down into their wine glasses ashamed. My jaw tightens, but I don't speak. The humiliation hangs in the air, thick and heavy. My son lifts his glass higher. He taught me many things, like how to work hard yet end up with so little. A true lesson in what not to do with one's life. Tonight, let's drink to the future. Because he pauses and his smile turns cruel, the future belongs to me. The words strike like a hammer. I grip the arm of my chair, the wood biting into my palm. I see my granddaughter's eyes widen. She looks at me as though she expects me to fight back, to shout, to reclaim dignity. But my lips remain pressed shut. I refuse to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break. The wine in my glass trembles slightly as I lift it. I raise it halfway, then stop. Around me, guests force smiles and sip. My son drains his glass triumphantly, basking in the attention. Memories flood my mind. I see him as a boy again, running barefoot in the yard, shouting with joy as I pushed him on the swing. How did we get here, from a boy who once clung to my arm to a man who now shoves me into shadow? I feel the weight of the envelope again pressing against the table by my plate. Its presence is like a heartbeat, steady, insistent. My late wife's words are waiting inside. Did she foresee this? Did she leave me a shield for this very night? The room erupts in applause for my son's cruel toast. I swallow hard, the wine burning like fire down my throat. But silence has its own way of speaking, and mine is louder than his cruelty. As the applause fades, I feel a gentle tug on my sleeve. My granddaughter leans closer, her small frame almost hidden beside me. Her voice is so soft I barely catch it over the clatter of dishes. "Grandpa, don't trust him tonight. Please," she whispers, her breath trembling against my arm. Her words cut deeper than any toast. She's only 16, yet her eyes hold a fear beyond her years. She glances nervously toward her father, my son, and then quickly looks away, as if afraid he might catch her warning. I want to ask her what she knows, but before I can, she straightens in her chair, plastering a false smile on her face. I sit frozen, torn between pride and sorrow. Pride that she sees the truth. Sorrow that she is forced to live in its shadow. The innocence of youth should be laughter and dreams, not fear of betrayal from one's own blood. I lift my fork, though I can't bring myself to eat. The duck glistens, but every bite feels poisoned with bitterness. My son clinks glasses with his colleagues again, laughing loudly as if nothing has happened. But my granddaughter's words linger like a ghost in my ear. I recall a peculiar detail from old village customs. Elders believed that children could sense danger long before adults did, their spirits unclouded by greed or pride. Tonight I wonder if she has inherited that gift. Her warning feels like prophecy. The candlelight flickers, throwing shadows across the table. I study my son's face, the arrogance in his smirk, the way his jaw tightens when he thinks no one is watching. There is calculation in his every move. He believes the stage is his and I am merely the relic in the background. But he doesn't know about the envelope. He doesn't know that my late wife's handwriting still has power. I rest my hand on the envelope now, almost protectively. My granddaughter notices and her eyes soften with relief. For a moment there is a silent bond between us, a thread of loyalty in a room otherwise filled with betrayal. "Still, the storm hasn't broken yet." Her whisper was only the first rumble of thunder. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The meal continues, but the taste of food has long since vanished from me. My son's voice rises again, sharper now, carried on a wave of arrogance. He leans back in his chair, his wine glass swirling lazily between his fingers. "Look at him," he says, suddenly gesturing toward me with a smirk. 70 years old, and still wearing the same jacket he's had since I was a boy. "Tell me, Father, does it keep you warm at night, or just remind you of how poor you've always been?" The room falls into stunned silence. A few guests chuckle nervously, trying to ease the tension, but most glance down at their plates, unwilling to be caught in the crossfire. My face heats, but I keep my posture straight. My jacket may be worn, but it has weathered storms he could never imagine. I notice my son-in-law's smug smile across the table, feeding off the spectacle. The cruelty is not random. It is calculated, meant to break me piece by piece in front of others. My son lifts his glass again, clearly proud of his performance. Perhaps, he continues, you should have invested in new clothes instead of wasting money on that old countryside house. What use is a man with nothing to show for his years? I press my hand against the table, steadying myself. Anger surges, but I bite it back. My father once told me, a wise man doesn't fight every insult he lets silence grow heavy enough to shame the speaker. Tonight those words feel like iron in my blood. My granddaughter shifts uncomfortably beside me. She shoots me a glance filled with quiet sorrow, as if apologizing for her father's cruelty. My heart aches, but I give her the faintest smile, a silent promise that I will not crumble. The insult stings, yes, but it also steels me. I let my gaze drift to the envelope once more. My wife's handwriting feels alive, whispering courage from the paper. I don't know yet what truth it holds, but I sense it will cut deeper than any insult. Guests murmur again, the tension spreading like cracks in glass. My son basks in it, convinced he has the upper hand. He doesn't realize that arrogance blinds more than darkness ever could. Silence has its own way of speaking. Tonight it is on my side. The clatter of forks slows. Conversations stumble and die out until the only sound left is the faint crackle of candle flames. The silence stretches across the table like a heavy fog. It is not the comfortable silence of family, but the strained quiet of people holding their breath. No one speaks for me. Not my son's colleagues, who smile politely but avoid my eyes. Not my daughter-in-law, who shifts in her seat but stays glued to her husband's side. Even the guests I've known for decades, neighbors, old friends, stare into their plates as if the patterns on the porcelain suddenly hold great interest. Their silence is a verdict more painful than my son's words. It reminds me of something I once read in a legal case years ago. Silence in court, from witnesses who knew the truth but feared speaking, often condemned the innocent more than the testimony of liars. Tonight, this table feels like a courtroom, and I am the accused left without a defense. My son seems to sense this power. He leans back, smiling faintly, letting the silence work for him. His cruelty doesn't need repetition. The quiet validates it. I glance at the empty chair beside me again. Its absence feels louder now, like a missing piece of justice. My wife would have filled it once, her hand resting lightly on mine, her voice slicing through the tension with calm strength. Without her, the silence bites deeper. I sip from my glass to steady myself, but the wine tastes bitter. I think of an obscure saying my father used to whisper when disputes arose in the village. The loudest room is the one where no one dares to speak. Tonight, I finally understand. Then, just as the silence threatens to crush me, my granddaughter shifts again. Her eyes brim with unshed tears, and she gives me a look that seems to say, "Hold on." That flicker of loyalty is enough to keep me upright. I draw a deep breath, my fingers brushing the envelope. It feels almost warm now, as though alive with the memory of my wife's touch. Whatever truth it contains, I know it will not stay hidden forever. The silence lingers, but I sense it is the calm before a storm. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The silence breaks like glass underfoot when my son suddenly slams his glass down onto the table. The sharp crack makes several guests flinch. His face is flushed with wine and pride, and his voice booms across the room with a force that makes the chandelier tremble. "I'll take it all," he shouts. Every head turns toward him. Forks freeze in midair. Wine drips from an overturned glass. My heart stutters, though I keep my expression still. He is no longer hiding behind snide remarks or veiled insults. Tonight he bears his greed for everyone to see. All of it, he continues, rising to his feet. The house, the land, the accounts, everything that belongs to him will soon belong to me. Why? Delay the inevitable. A murmur spreads through the guests. Some whisper in shock, others exchange glances caught between politeness and horror. My daughter-in-law rests a hand on his arm, whispering something meant to calm him, but he shakes her off with a scowl. I glance at my granddaughter. Her eyes are wide, brimming with fear, but she doesn't look surprised. She knew this moment was coming. Her earlier whisper rings in my ears. Don't trust him tonight. The declaration cuts deeper than any insult. It is not just greed. It is a public stripping of dignity. A son announcing his father's worth is nothing more than property to be seized. My pulse pounds, but I remain seated, my hand pressed against the envelope as though it could anchor me against the storm. I recall a curious detail from an old inheritance dispute I once read about in the village archives. One son declared his father's estate his before the man had even died. The villagers shunned him forever, calling him the living grave robber. Tonight I see that same shadow clinging to my own blood. The room feels colder. Some guests avert their eyes, unable to watch a son humiliate his father so openly. Others lean forward, hungry for the spectacle, as though cruelty has become their entertainment. My son leans across the table, his voice dropping low but still audible. Your old father. It's time to let go. I will take it all whether you like it or not. I tighten my grip on the envelope. Its weight reminds me that my wife's hand still reaches through time, perhaps to defend me tonight. The storm has broken, but the lightning has not yet struck. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. The words hang in the air like smoke. I'll take it all. My son's declaration is so brazen that even his closest friends at the table shrink back in their seats. Glasses tremble in hands, forks clatter against plates, and the warmth of the celebration drains away in an instant. I see it clearly, the shift in the room. One guest, an old neighbor, presses his napkin to his mouth to hide his shock. Another stares at his lap, unwilling to meet my eyes. Even my daughter-in-law, usually quick to smile at his arrogance, pales, as though she too realizes he has gone too far. My granddaughter's lips part, but no words come out. Instead, her eyes flicker with both shame and fear. She knows that line should never have been crossed. My son, however, revels in the silence. His chest swells with triumph, mistaking their discomfort for awe. He mistakes fear for respect, a blindness born from arrogance. He drains his glass and slams it back onto the table, grinning as though he has already won. I remember something a lawyer once told me long ago: in disputes of inheritance, the loudest voice often hides the weakest claim. Watching my son now, I understand those words better than ever. The envelope on my plate feels heavier, its edges cutting faintly against my palm as I press down on it. My late wife's handwriting seems to glow faintly in my memory, a reminder that the truth is not always spoken by the loudest man in the room. The guests shift uncomfortably. One whispers to another. Did he really just say that? Their faces are pale, their bodies tense. No one knows what to do. No one dares to challenge him directly. My son notices their unease and mistakes it for submission. He leans forward, his voice sharp as a blade. Yes, you all heard me. Everything my father owns will be mine, soon. For a heartbeat, the room seems to hold its breath. The chandelier flickers overhead, the shadows on the wall stretching longer. It feels as though even the house itself recoils from his words. But what he doesn't realize is that pale faces are not a sign of loyalty. They are the mark of witnesses, people who will remember this night long after his voice fades. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The envelope rests beneath my hand, the paper already soft from the sweat of my palm. My son's voice still echoes. I'll take it all. Yet something inside me whispers that I must not wait any longer. With deliberate slowness, I slide my finger under the flap. The room continues buzzing with uneasy whispers, but my focus narrows to the single sound of paper tearing. Inside is not what I expected. No legal document, no will, no stern letter. Instead, a photograph slips into my hand, edges worn, colors faded by time. My breath catches. It is an image I thought lost forever, my wife standing beside me in front of the old countryside house. Her smile is luminous, the way she always was when she looked at family, her hand resting on my arm as if grounding me. But there is something else. In her other hand, she holds a small brass key. I'd forgotten about that moment the day she insisted on taking the picture with the key. One day she had said, "This will matter more than you know." The key. The hidden storage under the floorboards of the countryside house. My heart pounds as memory collides with the present. That key unlocked a small chest I sealed years ago, Bank documents, deeds, savings my son never knew existed, wealth not flaunted but kept quietly for a future that now seems to have arrived. I clutched the photograph tighter, my wife's handwriting on the envelope, her face in the picture, the key in her hand. It is all deliberate. She left me a reminder, a weapon of quiet power. The guests nearest me lean forward, curious. My son notices his smirk faltering. What is that he demands? I don't answer. Instead, I let the silence thicken, letting the weight of the photograph settle over the table. My wife is gone, but her presence fills the room, her smile captured on fading paper, giving me more strength than any toast or insult could take away. A peculiar thought crosses my mind. In some old traditions, photographs were believed to hold fragments of a soul. Tonight I believe it. She is here with me. And her soul has brought more than comfort, it has brought evidence. My son takes a step closer, trying to snatch the photograph from my hand, but I pull it close to my chest. His arrogance falters for the first time, replaced by a flicker of unease. The photograph is no longer just a memory. It is a key to the past, to the truth, to a hidden future my son cannot control. Silence has its own way of speaking. Tonight, it speaks through this fading image. The photograph shakes faintly in my hand, as though alive, its edges trembling with my pulse. My eyes fix on the brass key in my wife's hand, the smile she wore that day, and suddenly I am pulled back, decades into memory. It was the summer of 1984. The air was thick with the scent of ripening rice fields, and cicadas screamed from the trees. I remember kneeling on the wooden floorboards of our countryside home, carefully sliding a small chest beneath the planks. My wife knelt beside me, her face calm but determined. Inside that chest we had placed deeds to land savings bonds and a bank book she insisted we keep hidden. For the children, she whispered, but only if they deserve it. She had pressed the key into my palm with such certainty that day. Promise me, she said, you will guard this. Not everything must be seen by greedy eyes. I promised, though at the time I thought it unnecessary. Who could betray their own blood? Now, staring at this photograph, I realized she foresaw the storm long before I did. The key was not just for treasure, it was for truth. The room around me blurs, voices dim. I hear only her voice echoing across the years. The memory of her perfume drifts into my nose, though I know it's only in my mind. My chest aches with both love and regret. Love for the woman who left me this silent strength, regret for not seeing my son's greed sooner. When my vision clears, I find my son watching me, suspicion narrowing his eyes. What is it? He snaps. Show me. He tries to sound commanding, but there's a crack in his tone. I tuck the photograph closer, sliding it partly beneath the envelope. Not yet, I murmur, my voice steady. For the first time tonight, I feel control shifting, however slightly, back toward me. I recall an old superstition from my village. When a dead loved one visits in dreams or leaves signs, it means they have unfinished business to resolve. Tonight, my wife's photograph is such a sign. She refuses to let her family's legacy be stolen. The guests watch, unsettled, whispering to one another. My granddaughter leans toward me again, her eyes bright with both fear and hope. She doesn't need me to explain. She understands that whatever is in my hand matters more than any cruel words spoken tonight. I press the photograph flat against the table, feeling its weight like a heartbeat. This is no longer just memory. It is a warning, a promise. And I know now the storm has only begun to break. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The dining room doors creak open with a sound that slices through the tense silence. Every head turns. For a moment, even my son's arrogance falters. Standing in the doorway is a man in a dark suit, briefcase in hand, his presence radiating quiet authority. It is Mr. Han, the family lawyer. My breath catches. I had not invited him tonight. His arrival is no accident. Someone called him. Or perhaps he came by my wife's instruction, arranged long before her death. His eyes scan the room, lingering on me, then on my son, before he steps forward with measured calm. Conversations die instantly. The guests shift uncomfortably, whispering under their breath. My son stiffens, the confidence in his face flickering for the first time. Why are you here? He demands, voice louder than necessary. Mr. Han sets his briefcase on the table with a deliberate thud. I am here, he says evenly, because there are matters that must be addressed. Tonight. The words send a ripple through the room. My granddaughter grips my sleeve again, whispering, Grandpa, this is it. Her voice trembles, but her eyes shine with something close to relief. I glance at the photograph still hidden beneath my hand. The timing cannot be coincidence. My wife's envelope, the photograph, and now the lawyer, all threads woven into a tapestry she prepared long before I realized how fragile our family bonds truly were. My son pushes back his chair, his tone sharp defensive. "This is my father's birthday. You have no right barging in here with your theatrics." But his words sound less like command and more like panic. The lawyer doesn't flinch. Instead, he opens his briefcase and withdraws a thick folder bound with a leather strap. He places it squarely on the table directly between my son and me. The folder lands heavily, sending silverware rattling. The room is silent. Even the candles seem to hesitate, their flames bending as if to listen. I feel the tide turning. For years I have borne my son's insults in silence, but tonight there is another voice in the room, one that carries weight he cannot easily dismiss. I recall a curious fact from history in ancient Rome. Lawyers were forbidden from entering dining halls during feasts, for fear their presence would turn celebration into conflict. Tonight, Mr. Hahn's entrance proves that even old customs understood the danger of truth intruding on false cheer. My son narrows his eyes at the folder, but I can see it in his face, the pale crack of fear spreading across his confidence. The storm has arrived, carried in on quiet footsteps, and a briefcase full of secrets. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. The folder sits on the table like a shadow no one dares to touch. Its leather strap is worn, the corners scuffed as though it has traveled through many hands before finding its way here. The guests lean forward slightly, curiosity sparking in their eyes, but no one dares to speak. Mr. Hahn places a steady hand on the file. His gaze sweeps the room, then settles on me. This, he says, his voice low but firm, concerns the legacy of this family. My son scoffs loudly, though the edge in his tone betrays unease. Legacy. My father is sitting right here breathing. There is no legacy to discuss until he's gone. And when that time comes, it will all be mine. He jabs a finger against the table as if daring anyone to contradict him. The lawyer doesn't flinch. Instead, he loosens the strap and slowly opens the folder. The sound of paper against leather seems louder than the chatter of the party had been minutes earlier. He spread several documents across the polished wood, their edges catching the candlelight. I lean closer and glimpse familiar seal stamps of the bank property deeds marked with my wife's neat signature. My heart pounds. These are not the documents my son expects. They are the ones we tucked away all those years ago, hidden from greedy eyes. Gasps ripple through the room. One guest murmurs, "Those look official." Another whispers, "I thought he had nothing." My son's face reddens. "What is this performance?" he snaps. "Father, tell him to stop." He looks at me, but his eyes no longer carry certainty. There's a crack, a falter, like a child caught stealing. I keep silent, my hand resting protectively on the photograph beside me. Silence, I realize, is more powerful than denial. The lawyer adjusts his glasses and clears his throat. "There are matters here that must be clarified, particularly regarding ownership, inheritance, and the instructions left behind by your late mother." His words slice the air with precision. The guests exchange looks, their expressions a mix of shock and anticipation. My granddaughter grips my sleeve tighter, whispering, "It's starting, Grandpa." I think of an obscure fact I once read in medieval feasts. It was common for disputes to break out over property right at the dining table, with witnesses present to ensure truth could not be denied. Tonight feels no different. This table has become a battlefield, and the documents are the weapons. My son glares at the lawyer, his jaw clenched. But in his eyes I see at the first flicker of doubt, the fear that his loudest declaration may soon crumble beneath ink and paper. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The moment the lawyer spreads the papers across the table, my son explodes. His chair screeches against the floor as he bolts upright, the sound sharp enough to make several guests flinch. He slams both fists onto the wood, rattling the glasses and sending a spoon clattering to the floor. "What is the meaning of this?" He roars, his voice cracking with fury. "This is my future, my inheritance. You have no right parading these papers in front of everyone." The veins in his neck bulge, his face crimson, eyes darting between the lawyer and me. For the first time tonight, his arrogance no longer feels controlled. It feels wild, desperate. Mr. Hahn does not move, does not flinch. His calmness infuriates my son further. "Sit down," the lawyer says quietly but firmly. "The truth is not yours to command." My son's wife tugs at his sleeve, whispering frantically, "Please, not here." But he shakes her off violently, nearly knocking over her glass. The guests gasp, shifting uneasily in their seats. The atmosphere has turned volatile, like a storm about to break over fragile roofs. I stay seated, my hand resting on the photograph beneath my palm. My son's anger washes over me, but instead of shrinking, I feel a strange steadiness take root inside. My wife's face in that photo seems to look at me with calm eyes, urging patience, reminding me that truth does not need shouting. I recall an obscure psychological fact: rage, when unchecked, often betrays fear more than power. Those who scream the loudest are often those who sense the ground slipping beneath them. Tonight, my son's fury is not strength, it is panic. The lawyer begins to gather one document, sliding it closer to me. My son lunges forward, trying to snatch it, but Mr. Han blocks him with a firm hand. The restraint only fuels his rage further. You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone? You think you can take what's mine? His voice cracks on the last word, and in that crack everyone hears it, the desperation of a man realizing his grip is loosening. The guests whisper now, no longer hiding their shock. Some pale, others exchange knowing glances. My granddaughter clutches my arm tightly, her voice trembling. "Grandpa, don't let him win." My son turns to me, his chest heaving, spit flying with each word. "Say something. Tell him I'm the heir. Tell them it's all mine." But I remain silent. Silence has its own way of speaking, and tonight it screams louder than his rage. Mr. Han lifts one sheet from the folder with deliberate care. His eyes skim the text before he places it flat on the table, angling it so everyone can see. The paper glows faintly under the chandelier, the inked words crisp and undeniable. "This," he announces, tapping the page, "is the will updated by your late mother before her passing. It contains a clause that it seems no one here has bothered to read carefully." A hush falls over the room. My son's breathing is ragged, his fists clenched at his sides. "Don't listen to him," he spits. "She left everything to me. Everyone knows it." But the lawyer shakes his head, his tone calm and precise. "Not exactly. The clause states that the inheritance does not pass directly to one heir. It is contingent." "Contingent," one guest echoes, leaning forward. Mr. Han adjusts his glasses and continues. "If the heir shows disrespect or endangers the dignity of the family, the assets are to be redirected either to another named beneficiary or to be held in trust." Gasps ripple around the table. I feel my heart hammering not only at the content, but at the realization that my wife foresaw this very moment. She had woven protection into the lines of the will, like stitching a hidden thread into fabric. My son's face drains of color, his lips part, but no words come. For all his loud declarations, he had never truly read the will. He assumed, he boasted, but he never checked the fine print. I recall a curious historical fact in 19th century France. Families often included morality clauses in wills to prevent reckless heirs from squandering fortunes. Tonight, that old tradition feels alive in my dining room. The lawyer clears his throat. "This clause is valid, binding, and final. It means tonight's words, witnessed by everyone here, could very well determine the outcome of this estate." The guests whisper, shocked, their eyes darting between my son and me. My granddaughter grips my hand tightly, her tears brimming with both fear and relief. My son stumbles, his rage sputtering into disbelief. That's not possible," he mutters, but his voice is weaker now, stripped of the triumph it carried minutes earlier. I press my palm firmly over the photograph and the envelope. My wife's presence is in every line of that clause. She had left me not only memory, but protection. The storm has shifted, and my son has no idea how close he is to losing everything. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The lawyer's words ripple across the table like a stone tossed into still water. At first there is stunned silence. Then the gasps come one after another like a chorus of disbelief. Guests cover their mouths with napkins, eyes darting toward me, then toward my son, as though they are unsure which of us is the true victim of this night. I hear whispers breaking out at both ends of the table. Did he just say disrespect could forfeit the inheritance? That toast, those insults. They were all in front of us. The boy doomed himself with his own mouth. Each murmur lands like a nail in my son's coffin. His face twitches, jaw tightening as if he could crush the truth with his teeth. But the witnesses are many, and their pale faces will not forget what they heard tonight. My daughter-in-law shifts uncomfortably, her hand hovering over his arm but not daring to touch. She knows the room is turning against him. Her eyes flick toward me, cautious, uncertain, as though weighing which side of the family line will offer security now. I take in the scene, slowly pressing the photograph flat against the table. My wife's handwriting on the envelope feels heavier than ever. She had trusted me to withstand this moment, to let truth unfold before desperate eyes. An old proverb from my village drifts through my memory. When a house burns, neighbors see the flames before the owner smells the smoke. Tonight, the neighbors at this table see clearly what my son refuses to admit. His arrogance has set his own legacy ablaze. The lawyer's calm voice cuts through the murmurs. All of you are witnesses tonight. His words cannot be taken back. They are part of the record now. My son slams his palm on the table again, but the sound feels weaker, like thunder without lightning. The strength in him is ebbing. His rage no longer inspires fear. It only deepens the gasps. I sip my wine, my silence deliberate. For years I bore humiliation alone, but tonight the room itself speaks for me. Each gasp, each whisper, each a dagger cutting into his false crown. Silence has its own way of speaking. And now so do the gasps. The tension is unbearable. My son's face is crimson, his fists trembling at his sides, but before he can lash out again, his wife rises slowly from her chair. Her movements are careful, deliberate, as if she is approaching a wild animal that might bite at any second. She lays a hand on his arm, her voice low but firm. "Enough," she whispers, though the entire table can hear. "You're making this worse." He jerks away from her touch, but she persists, her nails digging slightly into his sleeve. "Stop shouting. Everyone is watching. You don't understand how this looks." The guests shift uncomfortably, their eyes fixed on the scene. Some whisper behind their napkins. One older man shakes his head, muttering, "Even his wife sees it." The shame spreads like wildfire, and my son's pride burns in its heat. For the first time, his wife turns to me. Her expression is tight, caught between fear and calculation. There's no kindness in her eyes, only desperation, the look of someone who realizes the ground beneath her family is crumbling. "Father," she says, carefully, forcing the word, "please, this can be resolved without making a spectacle. He's just overwhelmed. It's your birthday. Let's not ruin it." Her voice is smooth, but it carries a tremor. She is not defending him. She is trying to salvage what little she can before the wreckage is complete. The truth is written in the set of her jaw and the way her gaze lingers on the documents spread before us. She fears losing everything: the house she decorated, the money she expected, the future she thought secure. I meet her eyes. For years she has smiled politely, masking contempt beneath practiced charm. Tonight that mask has cracked. I see her fear plain as day, and I know now that she was never my ally. I think of a curious detail I once read about traditional family feasts. When disputes broke out, it was often the daughters-in-law who stepped forward, not out of love, but out of survival. They knew their stability depended on which branch of the family tree held firm. Tonight, her gesture is no different. My son shakes off her hand violently, sending her stumbling back into her chair. Gasps rise again from the guests. Her face pales, but she says nothing more. She knows she cannot control him. I press my palm against the photograph once more, steadying my breath. My wife's presence is with me, still guiding me through their desperation. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. Mr. Hahn clears his throat, the sound sharp in the charged silence. From his briefcase, he draws a second bundle, smaller and worn with age. He places it gently on the table, sliding it toward me with the kind of respect my son has long forgotten. I recognize it instantly. The faded leather cover, the faint scent of old paper, my wife's careful touch preserved in every crease. It is the bank book we hid decades ago, tucked away in that chest beneath the countryside floorboards. My hand trembles as I take it, not from weakness, but from the weight of memory pressing down on me. Gasps ripple through the guests as I open it. Rows of numbers, deposits made quietly over years, stretch across the pages. Not scraps, not nothing. Savings built with patience, sacrifice, and love, wealth hidden not for pride, but for protection. My son lunges forward, eyes blazing. "That's mine," he snarls, trying to snatch the book from my hands. Mr. Hahn steps between us swiftly, his palm raised. "Careful," he warns. "This record is evidence, and it proves that your assumptions were wrong." The guests murmur louder now. One whispers, "I thought he was penniless." Another mutters, "There's more here than any of us knew." Their eyes no longer pity me. They respect me, even fear me a little. My granddaughter leans closer, tears welling in her eyes. "Grandma saved everything," she whispers, voice trembling with awe. She never gave up on us. Her small hand squeezes mine, and for a moment I feel her loyalty binding the broken threads of this night. I think of an obscure cultural detail in old Korean households. Families often hid their wealth in rice jars or under floorboards, away from greedy hands. My wife followed that tradition, leaving behind more than money. She left foresight, wisdom, and a shield against betrayal. My son's face drains of color, his bravado collapsing under the weight of what he sees. The pale look I've waited for spreads across his features, stripping away arrogance. He stumbles back into his chair, muttering, "No, this can't be." I hold the book steady, the photograph of my wife still beneath my other hand. She has armed me with both memory and proof. The past and present converge at this table, and for the first time tonight I feel the tide fully turning. But silence has its own way of speaking, and right now silence tells my son his power is slipping away. The color drains from my son's cheeks as though the very blood has abandoned him. Only minutes ago, his voice filled the room with thunder, claiming everything as his. Now, faced with the truth inked in the bank book, he looks like a man caught in a storm with no shelter. His lips part, but no words emerge. The arrogance that once laced every syllable has collapsed into stammering silence. His hand twitches against the table, as if he still wishes to snatch the book away, but his strength falters. Even his allies, the colleagues who cheered his cruel toast, avoid his eyes, now their faces pale mirrors of his own. One guest whispers not quietly enough. He mocked his father for having nothing, but look at this. Another adds, he didn't even know. The words crawl across the table like serpents tightening around my son's pride. I study his face carefully. This is not the confident man who towered over me moments ago. This is the boy I once scolded for stealing coins from his mother's purse. His guilt written plainly in the slump of his shoulders. History repeats itself, but tonight the stakes are greater than a few coins. I recall a curious psychological note I once read. Shame often shows itself physically, paling skin-hunched posture, trembling lips before it ever finds voice. My son's body is confessing what his mouth cannot. His wife lowers her eyes, withdrawing her hand from the table. She knows the tide has turned. She will not stand beside him in this defeat. My granddaughter, in contrast, sits taller, her grip on my sleeve steady and fierce. She has chosen her side, and it is not his. My son swallows hard, finally managing to speak, but his voice is weak, hoarse. This doesn't change anything. I'm still the heir. I deserve it all. Yet even he does not sound convinced. His face betrays the truth. The fight is slipping from his grasp. I let the silence answer him. My fingers remain firm on the bank book, the photograph beneath it, pressing against my palm like a heartbeat. My wife's foresight, her quiet protection is what truly speaks now. The room watches him, every pale face reflecting his downfall. For years I endured humiliation alone, but tonight witnesses surround me. His shame is no longer my burden. I thought I was safe, but I was wrong. As the room sinks into uneasy murmurs, I feel a tug at my sleeve. My granddaughter can no longer contain herself. Tears spill down her cheeks, shining in the candlelight. Her voice trembles, but it is strong enough for others to hear. Grandpa, I'm sorry. The words pierce deeper than any insult. She hides her face in her hands for a moment before lowering them, looking at me with eyes full of regret. I should have said something earlier. I knew he was planning this. I heard him and Mom whispering about the inheritance, but I was scared. Scared he would hate me if I told you. The room falls still again. Her confession is like a stone dropped into a quiet pond, ripples, spreading in every direction. Guests shift in their seats, glancing at my son, then at me. His wife stiffens, eyes narrowing, realizing their daughter has broken the silence that once protected them. My son slams his palm against the table. Quiet, he snaps at her. His voice shakes, not with authority, but with desperation. You don't know what you're talking about. But his daughter does not back down. Her tears keep falling, yet her words grow steadier. You said he was worthless. You said you'd take everything once he was gone. But look. She gestures toward the bank book and the documents spread before us. You were wrong. Gasps scatter across the table once more. Even those who tried to remain neutral can no longer pretend. My son's humiliation now comes not only from me, but from his own child. I place a trembling hand over hers. You don't need to apologize, child. I whisper, my throat tight. The truth always finds its way out, no matter how long it's hidden. I recall an obscure cultural belief in some villages. They said children's tears could cleanse the curses of their elders, washing away the sins of pride and greed. Tonight, I see the truth in it. Her tears do not weaken her. They cleanse the poison her father brought to this table. The lawyer nods solemnly, taking in her words as if they were sworn testimony. Her statement adds to the record. He says, what was hidden is now spoken aloud. My son's face crumples, rage and shame battling in his features. He shouts, but his voice is drowned out by the silence that follows his daughter's sobs. I hold her hand tighter. In her tears, I see both sorrow and salvation. But I soon realized that wasn't the worst of it. The dining room no longer feels like a celebration. It feels like a tribunal. My granddaughter's tears still glisten on her cheeks and her words hang heavy in the air. Now the guests cannot contain themselves. Murmurs ripple across the long table, hushed but cutting. I always suspected he was too greedy to shame his own father like that. The girl told the truth. Everyone heard it. Each whisper is a verdict. My son shifts uncomfortably, his earlier bravado shrinking under their collective judgment. His shoulders, once squared in arrogance, now sag as though the weight of every voice presses down on him. My daughter-in-law keeps her head low, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The mask of confidence she wore earlier has crumbled into silence. She dares not defend him now. One old neighbor leans back in his chair, shaking his head. I remember when he was a boy, he mutters to no one in particular, always demanding more than what was his. But this, he trails off, letting the unfinished thought speak louder than words. The murmurs grow bolder. Some guests exchange knowing looks. Others whisper prayers under their breath as though trying to cleanse themselves of the ugliness on display. My son's name is no longer spoken with respect, only with shame. I sit quietly, my hand still resting on the photograph beneath the bank book. My wife's face smiles up at me from the faded image, as if reminding me that this moment was always meant to come. She knew the truth would one day be revealed not by force, but by witness. I recall a curious historical detail in old village gatherings. Public opinion was considered a form of justice. A man shamed before his community often carried that scar longer than any legal punishment. Tonight, my son feels the same sentence passing over him. He tries to raise his voice above the murmurs, but the sound falters. You don't understand, he begins, but his words are swallowed by the tide of whispers. No one listens anymore. My granddaughter clings to my sleeve, her tears slowing, her voice hushed. They know the truth now, Grandpa. Yes, the truth is no longer mine alone to bear. It has spread alive in the murmurs of those who will not forget. Silence has its own way of speaking, but tonight whispers speak louder. The murmurs swell until they feel like waves crashing against my son's fragile defenses. He slams his fist on the table, desperate to regain control. Enough, he shouts, his voice cracking. This is my family's legacy. Mine. No piece of paper, no lawyer, no whispers will change that. But even as he yells, the power has drained from him. The guests' eyes no longer carry fear, only judgment. Their silence is not compliance, it is condemnation. Mr. Hahn adjusts his glasses and calmly stacks the documents into order. His voice is measured, but each word falls like a hammer. Your claim is not valid. You have publicly disrespected your father, and the clause in your mother's will is clear. The inheritance cannot go to one who disgraces the family. My son's face twists with desperation. He points at me, his finger trembling. Say something. Tell them I'm your son, your blood. You owe me everything. I look at him for a long moment. The boy I raised is gone. In his place stands a man hollowed out by greed. My voice, when it comes, is steady. Blood does not give the right to steal. Respect does. Gasps ripple again, sharper this time. The lawyer nods firmly. You've heard him. The documents, the witnesses, and his own words seal this matter. My son's wife pulls at his sleeve, her whisper, urgent. Sit down before you destroy us completely. But he wrenches away, eyes wild. No, he can't do this to me. I'll take it all by force if I have to. The threat hangs in the air like smoke. Chairs scrape as guests lean back, alarm flashing in their eyes. My granddaughter grips my hand tightly, whispering, Don't be afraid, Grandpa. I am not afraid. For the first time in years, I feel taller, stronger. My wife's photograph beneath my palm, the bankbook heavy beside it. These are not just objects. They are proof that truth outlives lies. I recall a curious cultural detail in old village councils. The final confrontation was not settled by the loudest voice, but by the calmest. Rage was seen as weakness, calmness as victory. Tonight I understand why. I look into my son's furious eyes and say quietly, You've already lost. The words strike harder than any shout. His face crumples, rage colliding with disbelief. The room holds its breath, waiting for the storm to break. But I soon realize that wasn't the worst of it. Mr. Hahn clears his throat, his voice cutting through the charged silence like a blade. Then, let us read the final instruction. He opens the folder again and produces a sealed document stamped with my late wife's mark. Every eye in the room fixes on him. My son leans forward, desperate sweat glistening on his brow. The lawyer breaks the seal, unfolding the crisp paper. His words are calm, steady. In the event that my son fails to honor his father with respect, all assets, including the house, the land, and the bank holdings, shall be transferred in equal share to the next generation. Gasps thunder through the room. My son stumbles back as if struck. His voice cracks. No, no, she wouldn't. She couldn't. But the lawyer continues. The inheritance is hereby designated to her granddaughter with provision for educational support and preservation of the family home. He looks up, his eyes locking on my trembling granddaughter. It is her name written here. The girl's tears overflow anew this time, not from fear but from shock. She shakes her head, whispering, "Me, but I don't deserve." "You do," I tell her, my voice strong for the first time all night, "because you chose truth, because you remembered family when others forgot." The guests murmur louder now, their whispers no longer judgment, but approval. Just one says firmly, "The right choice," another agrees. My son collapses into his chair, pale and silent, his fists limp at his sides. His wife turns away from him, shame etched in her features. For the first time, he looks small, shrunken, stripped of the arrogance that once filled the room. I think of an obscure legal fact I once read in ancient Chinese law: property could bypass children if they were deemed unfilial, passing directly to the next generation. My wife must have known this when she drafted her will. She had not only loved wisely, she had loved with foresight. The lawyer closes the document, his voice final. The matter is settled. By her words and your own actions, justice is revealed. The room exhales all at once as if a storm has passed. My granddaughter clutches my arm, trembling with relief. Her tears soak into my sleeve, but I do not mind. Those tears carry hope, not sorrow. And as I sit there holding the photograph of my wife beneath my hand, I feel her presence more strongly than ever. Her voice, though silent, speaks through every page, every clause, every choice she made. Justice has been revealed not with anger, but with truth. The dining room feels different now. The air that once pressed heavy on my chest has lifted, leaving behind a quiet almost too fragile to breathe in. The guests sit back in their chairs, murmuring softly, their eyes no longer on my son, but on me and on my granddaughter, who still clings to my sleeve as though afraid I might vanish if she lets go. My son is slumped in his chair, pale and broken. The arrogance has drained from him, leaving only the hollow shell of a man who thought greed would buy him power. His wife stares at her folded hands, shame written in every line of her face. Not once does she reach to comfort him. He is alone now, as he chose to be. I open the bank book once more, letting the candlelight fall across its pages. My granddaughter gazes at it with wide, uncertain eyes. "I don't know if I can carry this," she whispers. Her voice is fragile, yet beneath it I hear something stronger, the seed of responsibility. "You will not carry it alone," I tell her gently. "Family is not about who takes, but who protects. Your grandmother knew that. That is why she trusted you." Her tears return, but they are lighter now, glistening like dew. Around us, the guests nod, some with approving smiles, others with thoughtful silence. They will leave tonight carrying this story with them, and it will follow my son wherever he goes. His betrayal has become his legacy, and her tears, her courage, have become hers. I think of an old saying from my father: a family can be broken by one man's greed, but it can be rebuilt by a single act of truth. Tonight, I finally understand. The photograph remains under my hand. My wife's smile frozen in time. I whisper inwardly to her, "We did it. You guarded us even from the grave." The quiet around me is not empty now. It is peace. I rise slowly, the weight of 70 years heavy on my bones, but lighter in my heart. Tonight I say softly but clearly enough for all to hear, we learned what respect truly means, and we learned that justice is patient, but it always arrives. The lawyer nods once, closing his folder. The guests begin to gather their coats. Their whispers gentler, now carrying judgment, yes, but also admiration. My granddaughter holds my arm as though she fears the silence might swallow me if she lets go. I let the moment settle. Tonight there is no victory parade, no triumphant shout, only quiet. And in that quiet I find something I thought lost: dignity restored. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you, please subscribe and continue with the next story in the playlist.